Hi there. Thanks for tuning into the Canadian Constitution Foundation's Freedom Update. Today was the 6th day of hearings at the Public Order Emergency Commission, also known as the Rouleau Commission. This is the legally required public inquiry into the federal government's first ever invocation of the Emergencies Act, which was done in response to the 2022 Freedom Convoy. The commission is examining and assessing the government's decision to declare an emergency. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick summary of some of the things that stood out to me in day 6 of these historic hearings. Today, there were 2 witnesses, acting Ottawa Deputy Police Chief Patricia Ferguson, or Trish Ferguson, and OPP Officer Craig Abrams. But in this video, I'm actually only going to be summarizing the evidence from Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson because I have some meetings downtown, so I'm actually not able to catch Mr. Abrams' testimony. But don't worry, we do have a team of lawyers who are watching and taking careful notes. I also have a really exciting update about a new request that we have for the commission, which is that they call Premier Doug Ford as a witness. I'll give you more information at the end of the video. So I can't wait to tell you all about what happened today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Christine and I'm the Litigation Director for the Canadian Constitution Foundation, a legal charity that fights for fundamental freedoms in Canada. I upload regular videos about our ongoing cases, and I'm uploading regular video summaries about the hearings during the Rouleau Commission. We are also a party to these hearings, so we are also participating in cross-examining witnesses. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please hit like and subscribe below. It really helps my videos out a lot. Also, please remember that nothing in these videos is legal advice. If you have your own legal question or problem, please consult your own lawyer. And before getting into what happened today, this is just a summary of some of the key parts of a full day of hearings that stood out to me as especially interesting and worthy of summarizing in this video. This is not a complete summary of everything. And please keep in mind that unless I tell you otherwise, this is just my summary of the evidence. It's not necessarily my opinion of the evidence. Unless I tell you it is my opinion. And if it is my opinion, I'm always going to tell you that. This is also just my best recollection based on my observations and notes. If you want every detail about what happened, I recommend watching the hearings themselves. They're streamed online and on CPAC, and you can also go online to the Commission website and read the transcript. Okay, let's get into the evidence of what happened today. First, Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson was asked what intelligence from the OPP was shared with Ottawa Police. This came up yesterday when evidence from an OPP officer, an intelligence officer, he testified that they had told Ottawa in some reports, in some intelligence reports, that the protest trucks were planning on staying for an extended period, maybe a month, and that there were hundreds of them coming. Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson testified that those reports came to Ottawa, but a number of senior officers at that point had changed portfolios. For example, Officer Drummond had received these reports, but he had changed portfolios. But she said the reports were shared with slowly. She testified that the first report she received was on January 7th or January 28th, when she says the convoy was already well underway. Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson was also asked if her team at the police started planning before the convoy arrived, and if they were aware of those Hendon intelligence reports that said that the convoy was going to stay for weeks. She confirmed that her team had received those reports. She was asked about the testimony from OPP Superintendent Morris from yesterday, where he had said that the intelligence he'd shared with Ottawa suggested that the protesters would stay for weeks, and she was asked explicitly if her planning took that into account. She said that her team used all the information that they had and based their plan on their experience of what demonstrations in Ottawa usually look like. Asked what police would have done differently now in hindsight, and she said that they would have made better use of that intelligence that said that the trucks were going to stay longer. Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson was also questioned about negotiating with the protesters. She testified that Chief Slowly had questioned her on why the police would negotiate with protesters. She said she thought it could bring the temperature down if they negotiated and make sure things ended safely. She also testified that the assumption was that most of the protesters were law-abiding, to quote her. And she said she didn't think that Chief Slowly was familiar with the national framework for engaging with protesters and de-escalating. She also testified that when enforcement action started, this was a period before the Emergencies Act was invoked, where some protesters started getting arrested. I actually forget the exact date of this, but it was early February. She testified that the Ottawa police negotiation team was not notified that that arrest crackdown was going to happen, and that they were caught off guard. They were caught as off guard as the protesters were. And she said that the negotiating team felt very frustrated that because they'd established a good relationship and good communication with a group of the protesters. And she said that there were a lot of things that prevented her negotiating team from getting these quick wins. She gave an example of the protesters asking for porta potties, and that the Ottawa police event commander would not give them 1 inch. She said that she thinks that the OPP team was frustrated too, and that this crackdown without the negotiating team knowing about it broke the trust that her team had developed with the protesters. She testified that Chief Slowly also didn't want to hear any dissenting positions from the plan that he developed. He wasn't interested in negotiating with protesters, and that anyone who got in the way of his plan, to quote, would be crushed. Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson testified that Chief Slowly said the integrated planning team was, to quote, a conspiracy being controlled by, again, to quote, political masters. And she said she thought this meant that all of this was politically influenced. She did not have the same view. She did not share the same view as Slowly, but she said she was new to her role as Deputy Acting Chief. And she just felt that these were cops, the OPP and the RCMP were just cops coming in to help. But obviously Slowly had a different view. She testified that relations were strained at some levels, like chief to chief, and between some political actors. Deputy Acting Chief Ferguson was also asked about the circumstances of when the OPP can take over a command, for example, taking over command of the Ottawa Police Services. And she testified that because Ottawa Police Services was in charge jurisdictionally, Chief Slowly would have had to request that the OPP take over. And she said she didn't think he would have wanted to do this because he didn't want to give up command. But she said that the commission would have to ask Slowly himself if they wanted to know. She was also asked about the use of the Emergencies Act. On cross-examination by Chief Slowly's lawyer, she said that the Emergencies Act had, to quote, greased the wheels of the plan that they already had in place. She cited things like the freezing of accounts. She also said that the Emergencies Act allowed the police to move with, to quote, further confidence with the plan that they had in place, and that Ottawa Police Services alone did not have enough resources to end the protests. She also testified on cross-examination that the Ottawa Police actually had the heavy vehicle tow trucks, a number of them lined up before the Emergencies Act was invoked, but that the Emergencies Act made them feel, to quote, more confident, especially with that seizing of assets. Now, my opinion here, feeling confident is not a part of the legal threshold. The discussion of the Emergencies Act was picked up again on cross-examination, and this was all really interesting to me because keep in mind, what I'm most concerned about is the question of whether there were other legal tools available and if the Emergencies Act was absolutely necessary. Because after all, that is the legal threshold to use this extraordinary law. On cross-examination, Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson testified that if there was an integrated command sooner, that was the command of the Ottawa OPP and RCMP, she said it could have cleared protests sooner. She was also cross-examined by counsel for the protesters. He asked her about the freezing of assets that she had brought up. He asked how many people whose accounts were frozen immediately left the city. And she said she didn't know. He put it to her that 58 to 59 accounts were frozen, and she said again that she didn't know. And he also put it to her that if someone's account was frozen, it was very difficult to leave the city because you didn't have money to leave the city. And she said that she had heard media reports about that. He also put it to her, the protesters' lawyer, that the Emergencies Act didn't order an increase in officers. She agreed that it did not, but that it allowed the RCMP to come and work in Ottawa without being sworn in. Now, this was interesting to me because in earlier testimony from other witnesses, in particular, the mayor's chief of staff, Serge Erpin, he testified that the swearing in of officers actually wasn't the issue. It wasn't causing the bottleneck. And a JCCF lawyer on cross-examination actually asked her how much time was saved by skipping the swearing in. And she said it saved a few hours and some paperwork. The counsel for Chief Sloley also asked her why the city had not obtained an injunction and about RCMP Commissioner Lucky's opposition to an injunction. And Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson said that her understanding of that was that if the city had obtained an injunction without the resources to actually enforce it, that would have been counterproductive. It wouldn't have been good. So counsel for the protesters on cross-examination then asked her, once they did have those resources, if they would have been able to enforce the injunction. And she said, yes, they had many officers at that point and would have been able to enforce an injunction. Now, back to that line of questioning from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom's lawyer, the JCCF's lawyer. This was one of my favorite lines of questioning. The things that stood out to me in this was that he asked Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson to confirm her testimony that there were two main advantages to the federal government invoking the Emergencies Act. That was procuring heavy tow trucks and getting around the swearing in. She said, yes, those were the two main benefits, but also that the seizing of assets was useful. He asked her, was it useful or was it necessary? And she said it was useful. And again, remember that he asked her about the time that was saved by swearing in, and she had said a few hours were saved. And she also confirmed again that the tow trucks were already on their way to Ottawa before the Emergencies Act was invoked, although she didn't know all the details specifically about how they were procured. Another interesting point that stood out to me was that she testified that ultimately it took more than the 1,800 officers that Chief Sloley had requested. She said it actually took about 2,200 officers to end the protests. So as I said, I wasn't able to finish watching the entire hearing today because I have to go downtown for an event for an award for Adrian Batriff put on by the Taxpayers Federation. So I'm really excited about that, but unfortunately I won't be able to finish watching the hearings. But I also wanted to let you know about a really exciting development, which is that we've written to the Commission to ask for Premier Doug Ford and Solicitor General Sylvia Jones to be called as witnesses to the inquiry. We co-wrote a letter to the Commission along with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the organization representing Ottawa residents. We all want the Premier and the Solicitor General to testify. This is in light of that testimony from Steve Kanellakis and Serge Arpin, as also from Mayor Jim Watson. As a result of their testimony, it's pretty obvious that Ford and Jones, their evidence is relevant and necessary in order for us to get a full, accurate determination of all the facts. The evidence, if you'll remember, of Mr. Kanellakis and Mr. Arpin and Mayor Watson and the related documents to their testimony, it describes numerous attempts to persuade Premier Ford and Minister Jones to join these intergovernmental talks, these processes, and they apparently refused to participate. And this caused frustration by the federal and municipal officials. They were frustrated, they were refusing. Moreover, Mayor Watson testified that the province should have participated in these discussions and that if they had, provincial policing resources may have been provided to Ottawa more quickly. The evidence of these other witnesses also describes the apparent position of Prime Minister Trudeau that Mayor Watson should seek provincial resources before requesting further federal support. The Emergencies Act is a law of last resort, and it can only be used when all other legal authorities are ineffective. Premier Ford and Minister Jones need to answer why they didn't use the provincial emergency powers to address the Ottawa protests. I'll let you know what happens and if the Commission does decide to call these two people, the Premier and Solicitor General, as witnesses. And if they do, we would like to cross-examine them. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Please subscribe to the channel. You can also subscribe for our online freedom updates at the ccf.ca/freedom updates. And if you want to support our work participating in this historic inquiry, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at the ccf.ca/donate. We would not be able to participate without the generous contributions from all of our donors. So to everybody out there who donates, thank you so much. Okay, that's all for this update. Thanks for watching, and let's keep fighting for freedom in Canada.